Walk on by. Make believe that you don't see the
Alright, welcome everybody. We're going to get things started very soon. I'd like to give people a bit of time to settle in. So grab a cup of water, I'll be comfortable, and we'll begin 2 minutes past the hour. Thank you very much everyone for being with me today.
Walk on by. Don't stop. Walk on by. Don't stop. Walk on by. I just can't get over losing you. And so if I seem broken and blue, walk on by. Walk on by. Foolish pride, that's all that I have left. So let me hide the tears and the sadness you gave me when you said goodbye. Oh, walk on by. Don't stop. Walk on by. Don't stop. Walk on by. Don't stop.
Okay, I think we can officially get this session started. We are 2 minutes past the hour, so thank you very much everyone for joining, and great to have you here. My name is Alex, and I'm going to be the host of today's webinar, hosted at monday.com, of course. Discover effortless impact reporting for your nonprofit. I really believe in this topic. I think, from my experience, both working in nonprofits and alongside nonprofits, I've just seen so many times the amazing, amazing work nonprofits are doing, and the struggle they have translating that into kind of metrics which people can really clearly understand. I'm thinking now about potential donors, people who are going to award you grants, new people who are going to come and work or volunteer with you, being able to really clearly see how the amazing work you're doing translates to impact. Will be able to revolutionize the way you work, and with a couple of key techniques you need to learn at monday.com, you really can make this stuff a lot easier. So thank you first of all very much for joining. I don't know if this is anybody's first session with me, but it's great to have you here. We have 1 hour together today. Today's session is being recorded. Everybody who registered is going to get a copy of this recording. So if you need to rewatch it or share it with colleagues or anything like that, you are more than welcome. Please feel free to use the chat at any point. You can leave questions in there and I'll do my best to answer all of your questions today. Apologies in advance if anything gets missed, but I will go through the chat when I send that follow-up email and include any questions that remain. And you can also leave the chat as you can also use the chat, just as we're getting started, to let us know where in the world you are joining from. That is always fun. And thanks for the heads up, Erica. I will turn up my microphone. Listening to me with a very high volume. I'm going to turn it up now. Here's a warning. There we go. Hopefully that's a bit louder and more clear to hear. Perfect. Thanks for letting me know here. Okay, so I'm going to quickly run through what I have on the agenda. But of course, if we go off this agenda, that's totally fine. If there are interesting questions that take us down an interesting path, I'm always happy to do that. But this is what I thought we would cover today. I'll start with a quick introduction of myself and, of course, what we're offering for nonprofits. I suspect many or even most of you on the call today will already be on our nonprofit program. If so, that's amazing. You can also let us know in the chat how it was for you to join our nonprofit program, how the application and validation process went. But if you are not sure exactly what we offer, I'd be very happy to explain that. It takes just a minute, just so we are sure everybody's on the same page. In one sentence, we give monday.com for free to nonprofits. So if you are not yet taking advantage of that offer, definitely worth filling out a very simple application form. I will explain how you can do that. And then we're going to jump in and look at reporting in monday.com. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do that, but the best and most sort of obvious way to do reporting in Monday is using a dashboard. So I'll begin by covering some basic, setup techniques when it comes to dashboards. I've got a template in mind that I'm going to use to show that. And then we're going to take things a little bit deeper, a little bit more sophisticated. And we're going to look at 3 different ways that you can use dashboards for your reporting needs. So first of all, I'm going to show you how you can display your data, whatever that may be. Maybe it's the number of projects you've completed, or the amount of money you've raised, or the amount of volunteers you've recruited. I'm going to show you how you can display that data against a goal that you set, right? So that second number is something you make up. It's not plucked out of thin air, right? You've got experience. You know exactly how much you're going to need to raise to be able to build the school, or how many projects you need to finish to show the board success, or how many volunteers you're aiming to recruit to be a successful year ahead. So those numbers aren't completely random, but you do generate them, and then we'll show how you can compare one against the other. One step above that, I think, is when you're able to compare your data over time. So how things were done last year compared to how things are doing this year. Again, how much money we raised in 2024 to 25, or how many volunteers we recruited in 25 to how many we're going to recruit in 26. Or even in this case, it could be your actual intervention itself. Maybe what your nonprofit does is provide mental health support to people in need. And you survey them before the session, and you survey them after the session. And if you can compare those two results and show a positive trend, that's really compelling. To me, if I was a donor or someone interested in your organization, and I can see clearly that people scored 1 out of 5 before the session and 4 out of 5 after the session, wow, that's very clearly a sign of your impact. Even more sophisticated than that, and I hope we have time to get to this, at the end of the session, I would love to show you how we can use comparative data against the mean. What do I mean here? In this case, I'm thinking of showing what your organization is able to do versus what other organizations out there are doing, or what your organization is doing versus what the standard looks like before your intervention. And I've got a couple of nice examples here to show you. Let's say one example could be like the education standard of the kids that you teach versus the education standard of kids in your district, state, city, country. And as long as you've got access to some degree of public information in your field, you can upload that information to Monday and make some really nice comparative charts and graphs to show how special the work you're doing really is. Okay, so hopefully that's all clear. Let me do a quick run through the chat just to send some warm welcome to Marilyn from New Zealand. Kia ora. Good to have another Kiwi on the call. Janelle in San Diego, welcome. Molly in Oregon. Sonia in Greece. Karisto, welcome. Dorothy in Maryland as well. Becerra. Maud from the DCVC in Ireland. We've got Jeannie in Nebraska, welcome. Erica in Madison, Wisconsin. Caitlin in Arizona, how you doing? Reggie in Missouri. Jamie in New Orleans. Nick in Houston. Danita in Missouri. And I'm sure more people out there will say hi as we go along. So it's a nice spread across the world today. Welcome, everybody. And again, you can always use the chat feature for questions. That's the best place to put those. So yeah, it's great to meet you. I am, you know my name by now, but I'm Alex, and I've been at Monday in this role as a nonprofit success manager for about 3.5 years. Before that, I have a lot of experience in and around nonprofits in a couple of different countries around the world. I'm really passionate about the work that you're all doing. If you joined my sessions before, you've heard me say this, but I truly believe nonprofits are changing the world. You folks are honestly superheroes, and I'm sure having great impact in your own ways, in your own communities. And Monday, what we do is help the users of our platform be more efficient and streamlined in their work. So it's my job to help as many nonprofits as possible be more efficient and streamlined in their work. We have 24,000 active nonprofits right now using the platform. That number is growing all the time, and I'm working with thousands of them as we go along. Often, very small mom and pop type nonprofits with just a couple of people, but also some of the bigger names like you can see on the screen for you here. And a fun fact about me is that I'm a proud new dad. I've just come back from a couple of weeks off for paternity leave, but welcomed a little baby girl just a few weeks ago. So now you know a little bit about me. I can change track a little bit and talk about our nonprofit program. As I said before, you may well already be on a nonprofit program. If that is the case, that is amazing. And I'm happy to have you as part of our nonprofit family. But if for any reason you don't know what our nonprofit program is, this is the place to visit. Monday.com/nonprofits. And you have all the different tabs here. On the eligibility tab, you can read our eligibility criteria and guidelines. They're pretty broad. We've even made them broader than they were even just a few months ago, quite recently. So more organizations than ever are eligible for our nonprofit program. And if you think, even if you're not sure, you think you might be eligible, it's so easy to apply. Just click on this Apply Now button. It opens a very simple form. Takes just a few minutes to fill out. We just need to know, what your organization is, who you are, and what your nonprofit, what your account is, Monday.com, that you would like to join the nonprofit program. And assuming you're eligible, it all happens pretty quickly, just within a couple of days. We will convert that account over onto the nonprofit program. By default, you will get 10 seats for free, which is a pretty good number. I think for most nonprofits out there, that means they can get Monday.com access without paying anything. Like, it is completely free. If you are a bigger organization and you have a few extra people, you can also buy them seats at a really nice discount, 70% off. Or if you want to upgrade to our very highest tier, which is Enterprise, you also get a nice discount there. Our standard nonprofit offering, and this is where 99% of our nonprofits are, is on the Pro tier, which is the second highest of all the tiers. And I'm not a great salesperson. I don't think you need to upgrade to Enterprise in most cases. There are a couple of specific features there that you might choose to take advantage of. Of course, you're always welcome to do that. But yeah, like I said, this is good enough for almost every nonprofit. And everything I'm showing you today is possible here completely for free, unless you need a few extra seats, in which case, like I said, you get a bit of a discount there. So if you're not yet on our nonprofit program, definitely worth doing. It takes just a few minutes and can be a massive saver for you. So well worth it. If you are already on the nonprofit program, there are a few other tabs here that might be interesting for you. Maybe you want to see some of the other success stories we've had with other nonprofits, or visit our resource center where you'll find all the other free trainings. I run academy courses and these ad hoc webinars and open consultation sessions, which are available to nonprofits. You can find all of that here in our resource center. Tons of great resources there. If you aren't aware, stuff changing there all the time and all offered for free. So again, well worth a look if this is your first time. Thank you very much in the chat, everyone, for your congratulations. Always nice to hear that. And I think now what we'll do is jump into Monday itself. So welcome to Monday.com. This is how things look around here. And what I've got on my screen here are a couple of templates which I've downloaded, and then a few things that I've built myself and made tweaks to. And this is what we're basically going to be working in today. So I've first of all built what's called a workspace. This is my impact measurement workspace. And that's simply for today's course. I wouldn't necessarily group everything that you're doing under a workspace like that. You're going to have actual work that you're doing, and then you want to pull the impact from it. I wouldn't necessarily build something special just to track the impact. So I just wanted to make that clear. This is purely for me to keep organized in my workspaces. You can have as many workspaces as you want to. You can organize things as you want to, but it's the sort of highest level organizational breakdown within Monday. So I always recommend that, mirror that to your organization. What's like the highest level breakdown of organization in your organization? Organization in your nonprofit, and then kind of match that. That's probably the best way to do it. And then within this workspace, I have 3 folders: volunteer management, donor management, and water quality. And we'll see all of these as we move through the session today. So the volunteer management one that we've got here, it comes from a template. It's a template which I built. It's available to you for free if you're interested. Just visit mondayspaces.com and you'll find it in the nonprofit category. And you can see tons of these, different boards here for managing the volunteers, for tracking their work, their feedback, and so on and so on. But if we come down here to the dashboard, this is where you're going to see the real magic, especially when we're talking about impact reporting. So I'm going to use this as an example just to explain some of the key sort of initial features when it comes to setting up a dashboard. So the first and most important thing to note about a dashboard is that it doesn't actually contain usually any of its own data. Now, it could be a few very rare exceptions, but basically the data that we are seeing here actually lives in different boards. In our case, all this data is coming from these other boards here. And when you build a dashboard, the very first thing it asks you to do is to connect a dashboard to your boards. You can see here that this one is connected to three other boards in the template. Now, you can make changes at any point. Even if you've downloaded a template like this one, you can click on that button and you can disconnect boards, or you can connect new boards if you want to. Completely up to you. And then within a dashboard, we have what are called widgets. Each of these charts and graphs and maps and numbers, these are all examples of different widgets. And you add those by clicking here. As you can see, we've got 6 at the moment. We can have up to 30 on any one dashboard, but there's no limit to the number of dashboards you can have. There's only the limit of the specific dashboard, just to ensure that the performance isn't too greatly impacted. Once you get up to those big numbers, the high 20s and 30, the performance can be a little bit slower. So 30 is a nice limit that they've set. But if you need to have more, you can always just add a second dashboard. Volunteer dashboard 1 can have 30, volunteer dashboard 2 can have 30, and so on and so on. So ultimately, you are unlimited there. And when you add a widget, the first thing you need to do is choose what type you want it to be. So let's take a look at this first one we have here. This is showing us in which kind of part of the onboarding process our volunteers are. And this is a chart widget. And as soon as you add a chart widget, it'll ask, first of all, it'll display some information. It'll sort of guess as to what you're looking at trying to create. And then you'll need to come here to the 3 dots and the settings and basically just set the parameters so that it shows what you want it to show. For example, it's really easy to change the chart type. Right, here are all the different possibilities. Currently, obviously, we've got a bar graph, but if you prefer a pie chart, boom, with a click, it's a pie chart. If you do select a bar chart, as I did in this template, you obviously have 2 axes, right? The x-axis running down the bottom and the y-axis on the side. And you can pick what you want to appear in either of these axes. As long as the information exists in your board, again, the board we're looking at here is our volunteer database. This is where that's being pulled from. And here, if you look, we can see the volunteer database, and I've got the option of choosing any one of the fields from that board. Maybe it'll help if I show you the board just so that you can see how it looks. This is the volunteer database. You can see I've got their personal information and their initial submission date and where they can work and when they can work and all that kind of stuff. And I've chosen in my dashboard to show the number of volunteers that I have in each of these groups, because that's the sort of key category that I want to understand, where my volunteers are in the flow of work with me. But if you wanted to show something else, you would simply pick something else in that field. And then again, we have a second axis. Okay, the y-axis is, in this case, very simple. I've got a simple count of the number of items. How many volunteers appear in each of these groups? Each volunteer has its own row. It's a new item. So count of the items works perfectly. But I could actually use this y-axis to measure any other numeric value. So I've got a time tracking column. This could be measured over on the left-hand side instead of, or even as well as the count. That's not got any data, so not the best example. The total hours worked, maybe that will be relevant. I need to see how many hours people have worked in each of the different phases. Actually, that wouldn't really make much sense, because how can a past volunteer or an incoming volunteer? Never mind, you get the idea. You can pick and choose other fields here if you have other numeric data you want to pull in. This one's pretty similar. Okay, this is this time obviously a pie chart. And because it's a pie chart, we don't have 2 axes, we just have 1. And I chose to display the subjects that our volunteers can teach. This template was built with a made-up organization in mind, where famous scientists volunteer to teach these subjects to kids after school and in the weekend. And this is the competencies that my volunteers currently have. And I could pick any other field, for example, maybe where they're able to teach. I want to see that instead, or as well. It's very straightforward to do that. you're starting to get the idea, I assume now, of like the dashboard basics. This is another graph which is pretty similar, so I won't spend much time on that one. The locations is also pretty cool. It's just able to take a bit of location data. In our case, we have a column called the address, and it's putting a pin everywhere where we have a volunteer living. And that could be very useful for tracking, the progress over time of where you've done work. And then these two final ones are number widgets. So I added that by coming here to the number widget. The map, by the way, I had to come down to more widgets to find. There are a lot of widgets there to explore. And here I've, as the names would suggest, showing the averages of the ages and the hours that they've worked. And how did I set that up? Came to the settings. Again, I chose any one of the fields that I wanted. In my case, the age. In this button, I can pick how to display that. And I chose average. And in this one, the same thing, the number of volunteer hours worked. I chose this field, again, displayed as an average. When I come to the boards, one thing I didn't mention is because this is connected to multiple boards, I can actually show information from multiple boards added together if I want to. I could also, exclude certain boards if it's not relevant. Again, completely up to you. The kind of biggest takeaway, I guess, when it comes to these dashboard basics, I would say, is that as long as you've got the data in your boards, you can build a report to display it. It might take a while to, figure out exactly which parameters you're trying to do. That isn't the tough part, though, right? You will figure it out. I think more challenging is trying to figure out the business question. What am I trying to answer here? What do I want to know about my data? And if you know that, the rest is just a matter of changing the metrics, shifting the parameters until you have the graph and the chart that you want. Great. So that's a little bit of an intro to dashboards from a kind of high level. Before we move on, I do want to take a look at the chat because there is a question from Sonia. How are you doing? So Sonia says, so we enter the data we want to different dashboards, and then we can connect them in order to extract information, e.g., how many volunteers had specific training. Basically, yes. The one point I would correct from what you've said there, we enter the data we want into different dashboards, and then we connect them to, I would say, we enter the data into different boards. And I know that the terminology may seem like I'm splitting hairs here, but these are all called boards, right? With different columns and the different groups and so on. These are boards. And this is where the data will actually live. The dashboard, you'll even see here, has a different logo, and it works completely differently. So the data would live in a dashboard. The data would live in a board and then can be displayed and manipulated in a dashboard. You would add those, by the way, by clicking on the plus here. Here's the icon for a board. Here is the icon for a dashboard. I had all this already in the template, but if you're building it from scratch, that's what you do. And as I said, once you create a new dashboard, the very first thing it's going to do is ask you to connect boards to it. And you can pull from any of the boards in your account. I'll remove that one for now. But yeah, thanks for that clarification question, Sonia. That's really helpful. Elizabeth, good question. Can you give an example of data you would have in a board? So all of this stuff is examples of data that I would have in my board. In my case, I'm tracking the progress of my volunteers. So everything you see here is a bit of data that I'm storing in a board, whether it's their address or the date that they first requested to join the organization or how many hours they've worked. This is all examples of data that I've got about my volunteers, and my volunteer dashboard is going to interpret that information. But yeah, almost anything that you're working on, whatever the stuff you're doing, those will be the data points. Maybe with a few more examples, that'll become clearer, I hope. Cool, thanks. And Moed asks, is it possible to deal with users as numbers? For example, number of staff who received a communication training. Absolutely. That's what we've got, in fact, here, right? We've got here number of volunteers in each of these groups. So if you organized your groups differently, but you had another column to show training, yes or no, maybe you have a status column, we could come in here to the settings, and instead of the group appearing in the x-axis, I could pick that column, right? A status column, which said, did they receive training, yes or no? Here I've got their availability. Can they work on Sunday mornings, afternoons, and so on? You could choose that to show anything you wanted, including, as you said, whether they've completed training or not. Fabulous. Okay, Erica asks, can I show KPIs on the dashboard for mirrored boards and, say, Jira boards? So mirrored boards, that's no problem, right? You actually don't mirror boards in Monday, you mirror columns. So for example, here in my volunteer database, some of the data is actually mirrored, right? Like I have these other boards here, which are connected to the database and the information is mirrored. You don't need to worry about that too much. We're getting a little bit technical. You can, that's not a problem. If you've got information in Jira and a completely different platform, no, you couldn't automatically connect that in. You'd need to download and upload that information into Monday. I mean, it's not hard to do that. If you come here to the plus, you can import data directly from Jira. So you can bring it into Monday from Jira quite easily, but it would need to be in Monday, right? We can't connect the dashboard to boards 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Monday and board 5 in Jira. We need to bring that information in, but it is possible, quite straightforward to bring it in from Jira in that way. Okay, a few more technical questions that may be a bit more specific to people. First of all, about the products. So up here in the top right, you will see 9 dots. And this is where you can switch between the products. The Monday.com nonprofit program does now include all 4 of the core Monday products for free. So if you see the 9 dots up here in the top corner, you can switch between them. It may say something like start 14-day free trial. You can safely ignore that. If you're on the nonprofit program, you will have access 10 more free seats on each of these products. So if you want to switch between work management and the CRM, you're welcome. There are some of our older accounts who may still not be able to access these products. So if you don't see the 9 dots up there, unfortunately, that might be you. If your account's more than about two years old, that could be you. But we are working hard to fix your infrastructure. But all new accounts and all accounts created in the last year and a half or so have access to the product. So if you're yet to take advantage, you can definitely do that. And there's no limit, Jamie asks, to the number of boards you can have under the nonprofit program. It's not the basic plan. The nonprofit program is the pro plan. And on that tier, you have no limit to the number of boards you can have. On any one board, you do have a limit of the number of items you can have. That's 10,000. But you can always add another board and have another 10,000. So there's no limit overall to how much stuff you can put in here. Cool. Great questions. Thank you very much, everybody. So I want to move us along now, having covered this first point here, dashboard basics, to start looking at how we're going to display data against a set goal. And to do that, I thought we would look at my donor management solution. This is also a solution that you can download and for free. This one is in the template center that you'll find right here. And just like last time, we have a pre-built dashboard, which is connected back to the other boards in this template. So here we can see a couple of nice widgets, right? The donation amount that we've received per year. And we're tracking here year on year, the money that's come in. We've also got a third element here, not just the X and Y axis. We're also able to show if the money came in as part of recurring donations or one-time donations. Again, all of this is customizable, and you could change the way this is displayed. So instead of it being shown by year, it's by month. Instead of showing it whether it's one-time or recurring, you could show if it's general funds or a specific program, anything you like, just the same way we saw earlier by coming to the 3 dots here. But in this case, what I specifically want to do is to show how we can set some of our own targets. So I'm going to come into the settings, and this time I'm going to add what's called a benchmark line. And here I can put in the goal that we had for our fundraising efforts per year. So let's imagine that our goal was 4,000, and I can label this as annual fundraising goal. Okay, couldn't be much simpler, right? We've now got this nice clear red line showing our goal, and we can see that 3 out of the past 4 years and 3 out of the past 3 years, we've hit our goal, right? We've in one case, greatly surpassed. And in the other years, we've managed to get over the line. And I can see that pretty clearly. I can also, by the way, add more lines here. I'm not restricted to one. So if you wanted to break that down as our 2021 fundraising goal, I can say that. And in my second, I can say we were a bit more, optimistic. And this one, we set a goal of 7,000 for our 2022 fundraising goal. Now, the other nice thing, which I didn't mention, is that these dashboards are live, right? They are pulling data from your board. So as soon as I update the donations board with a new donation, it will appear here. I don't need to do anything extra to make that happen. If you don't believe me, I can show you. Let's add here a new donation. I'll put one in under the name of Phoenix Levy. By the way, if you want more information about managing donors and donations, I have a full course dedicated to managing donors and donations. Let's put in a really big donation so it really clearly stands out. I'll attach it here to Phoenix. So I've got my new donation, and without me doing anything, let's take a look at this dashboard. Boom, we can see here the confetti is flying, right? It's already recorded this extra $100,000 donation, making everything else look pretty puny, right? I did not need to do anything to make that appear here. Now, this widget is our fundraising tracker, and you can see that it does have some limitations, okay? For example, it's limited to only 500 items, and I very much hope that you have more than 500 individual donations, and this is a big problem for you. And I've got a good piece of news, and that is that there is a new widget which has just been developed, which is going to replace this one. It hasn't yet been added to the template. That's on my to-do list. But it is a very nice, very easy widget to use. If I click here on Add Widget, I can add the Gauge widget. Now, this is one of the many features only available on Monday's CRM product. Okay, that's not available on Work Management. So if you are working in a different one of these products and you like the Gauge widget, you can switch over to the CRM, and with a couple of clicks, you're able to add this one. And although it looks a bit different, has the same basic features. Come to the three dots and settings, and I can start to customize things. Just like the chart widget, I can start at the top and work my way down. So I can pick which style I like the most. I quite like the kind of speedometer look, and then I can pull in where I want the information to be displaying from. Now, in this case, because I've connected this dashboard to three different boards, right? The donations board, the donors board, and the donors activities board. It's actually pulling in certain information more than once. I actually only want to see here my list of donations. I don't want anything from the donors board or the donors activities board. I only want to see donations. And again, this is correct. It's taking only from the donations board the donation amount. And I've got the ability to display here whatever I want to, but this could be maybe donations to date, for example, and it will change the label here. And the target value, that's something which I can define myself. So this is our summer school fundraiser. Okay, we're trying to build a school. We've got a big campaign which we ran this summer, and we needed to hit, let's just do something that shows we didn't quite make it so you can see how it looks. We needed to hit 150,000 to hit this goal, and we came pretty close. But we didn't quite to get there. So that's how it would look. Or if we remove it here, we can see how it looks all the way to the top. So it's very easy to customize. We can change the color, both of the needle and of the bar here. I've got other settings I can change. For example, I can add here a unit value. So if I'm working in a different currency, I know we have people, in Ireland, we could change it to the euro symbol, in the UK to the pound. Whatever you need to do, you can change that here. You can also add your own symbols if you need to. And again, you can customize exactly where that data is being pulled in from. But I think that's a very nice way to see how you've gone, whether it's in a fundraising mission or anything else, to show how you've gone versus a goal that you have set. You can either put in your goals here in a benchmark line. You could use the fundraising goal widget, or you could use the gauge widget. And as you've seen, all three of those are pretty easy to set up. And remember, even if you're not talking about fundraising, this would work exactly the same if it's number of volunteers recruited, or number of beaches that we've cleaned up, or number of children that we've helped learn to read, right? You would remove the dollar sign, and this instead would be 150 children. Really straightforward. We can also make this a bit more specific, right? We can break this down a bit. So for example, here in this next widget, I've got a widget which is showing the total donated per donor. So I'm seeing each of my donors tracked across time. But maybe you want to build an individual widget for each of your donors. If you're really good at nurturing your donors, you maybe want to see how their donations have increased over time. And maybe you want to set some, goals for yourself year on year. So what we could do is duplicate this widget here. And then I'm going to add a filter to this widget. So once I'm here in the settings, I can come in and I can filter certain elements. So in this case, I only want to see information about, let's say, one donor. So I'm going to add a filter to the donations board. The column I'm going to filter based on is the name of the donor. Here I see all of the columns in my board. So let's say I only want to see Phoenix. And I want to add a benchmark line. Right? We're trying to ensure that Phoenix gives at least $100,000. For example. And we can see that we've reached that goal. But maybe we want to switch things around, and we actually wanted to see the progress of Phoenix over time. So in that case, we could duplicate this widget. And again, we'll come into the settings and we'll make it show exactly what we want it to show. First of all, I can remove these overall fundraising goals, and I'm going to change some of these features by adding again the filter, so that again, I only see donations coming in from Phoenix. So now I can see how Phoenix individually has progressed over time. Maybe I don't want to stack it at all. I can change that to a simple bar graph. And then that benchmark line is a bit irrelevant. Let's add another couple of zeros here. Let's say we wanted to reach 70,000 in 2025. We can see that as Phoenix has progressed, we've nurtured her. She's gone from being one of our lower donors to being, bam, our number one big donor. And we added these things in the space of a few seconds, right? It's really very straightforward to build these out, make them customized. And then, of course, you can actually draw insights from them. There's a lot of really cool ways that you can share these with other people. One thing I can note, first of all, is that you have a free and unlimited amount of viewers. Now, a viewer, as the name would suggest, can't make any changes in your account whatsoever. But if I come up here to the plus to invite new members, I can choose to invite someone as a viewer, meaning that they'll be able to see all of these reports, but they won't be able to mess anything up, won't be able to make changes, and they will not take up one of my precious 10 free seats or the discounted seats that I'm paying for. So if you've got, for example, 10 staff members, but you have another 10 people who sit on your board, and they all want to be able to see what's going on, but they don't actually work with you on a daily basis. You could invite them as viewers and be able to keep their finger on the pulse. They'll see as real time things are progressing, what's going on in your Monday account. That would, of course, require them to create a login, get a username and a password. And although that may not seem that difficult for some people, that's also not as straightforward as it might seem if someone's a bit older, maybe less used to technology, I'm not sure. In that case, we can also export these dashboards. Up here, you have the export button. It can be exported as a PDF with a click and then print it out if that's the way people want to work. Or a new feature, which I absolutely love, is this one, that we can generate these reports based on a certain criteria. So reducing the risk of printing a report or exporting a report when it becomes sort of locked in time. If you generate a report, you're able to generated at a specific time. So, okay, this is actually a different one. This is I clicked on the wrong button here. This is an AI-based report. This is a brand new feature that's so new. I have never actually seen this myself. That is pretty cool. And it's created here a doc for us, pulling in data from our board. That is really, really neat. I love that. That can also be shared with people externally. But what I was trying to show us was this one. This is what I meant to click on. Schedule PDF export, where it will create the export at a certain time. So if your board meeting is at 10 o'clock on Monday morning next week, but the people don't have access to the Monday account, they want to see a PDF, you can schedule it to be produced 1 hour before you go live, so you know that the numbers are as up to date as possible. That could even be emailed directly to the board members. So you can set this up one time, and every week on Monday morning, they can be sent a copy if they prefer not to have to come into Monday. It's so easy to set up, and it's all included here in the CRM product, which is just super, super cool. So I think you can see already some of these new reporting features are real game changers. Really, really cool. Excellent. So that's the first, I think, way of showing reporting against goals that you have set. Nothing too revolutionary there just yet. The next target for us is to show comparative data over time. And I think this one can really add a bit more value here, because setting your own goals and showing you met them is great. But if you're actually able to show that you've had an impact on people's lives in a really concrete, data-driven way, wow, that to me is even more compelling. So I'm actually going to return to the volunteer management solution for an example of this. I am going to look at the volunteer feedback that I've received from my volunteers. So what I've got here is a form that my volunteers are filling out, and they are, after every piece of work that they've done with us, telling us what they think of our organization. It can be anonymous if you want it to be. You can customize this form so they can ask different questions. The one key thing I think that you want to make sure you do have is some sort of numeric, quantifiable questions. I actually recommend having both. Like, these star-based questions are really helpful because it means that you can compare them one to another across time and put them in graphs. But it's also nice to have questions like these ones where people can write freely. Not everything we experience as human beings is able to be summed up in a rating of 1 to 5 stars. But if you give them the option to do both, they can write free text here, and they can also give you some data that you can work with. So we send them this form after every piece of work that they do for us. And then once the answers are submitted, they are logged in this table automatically. As soon as they press send, the answers will come into this lovely board. And this board is also set up, by the way, to connect back to our database. So I'm able to see if they do give a name, that the volunteer who submitted this form is actually in my database, and I'll log over time all of the answers of these individual people. Again, if you want more specifics about how to set that up, I do have a special dedicated course on volunteer management, also free, which you are welcome to register for. I have one coming up just next month, so feel free to do that. But what we're really interested in here is comparing these results over time. So what I've done is I've added here, by clicking on the plus, a new view. And what we're looking at actually looks very similar to those dashboards we've seen until now. The only difference is, because I added this as a view, not by coming here to the plus and adding a new dashboard, everything that we see here is only going to be coming from this one board. There's no way I could pull in information from a different form, living in a different board, because this is a tab on this one volunteer feedback form. All of these different tabs, these are called views. And that's a very helpful name. They're all views, different ways of looking at the same information. Whereas these dashboards, which have this icon, are connected to multiple boards, pulling in information from multiple sources. So in this view, I've added these different charts and widgets to show the average scores and how volunteers are doing overall. But where things I think get really interesting is something like this. This one here shows one specific volunteer. Okay, this is Nikola Tesla. Okay, I've chosen to show in the y-axis here one specific question. How would you rate your volunteer experience with us overall? And I can see at first he didn't think much of us, right? He gave us a 1 out of 5, pretty poor. But we've pretty steadily over time increased. We had a little dip there, but now I can see we're up to 5 stars. Over the course of the years that he's volunteered with us, that's completely turned around his experience. And this is indisputable data. This isn't me saying, yeah, my volunteers, they get a lot out of volunteering with us and they have a good experience. No, this is showing concretely that Nicola has had a good experience that's got better and better and better over time. And if you can do this for all of your volunteers, amazing. Also, by the way, you want to be smart about the way you show your data. I'm talking visually here. Which one of these two graphs looks better? They're showing the same data. This is showing Nicola's progress over time. Okay? And because I've got the graph stretched out long and thin, it shows a sort of gentle rise up to 5 stars. What I've done here is just make it shorter. I haven't doctored the information. I haven't lied. I haven't pulled any tricks over anyone. I'm just changing the shape of the data to tell the story. I don't think there's anything wrong with deciding on the narrative, the story you're trying to tell, and displaying it in a way that best highlights that. This looks way more impressive to me. First of all, I've got 2 volunteers logged here, and you could have all of your volunteers. It's not a problem. I just wanted to show you how it could look with multiple in the same chart. And we now see this, steep rise. We even see James is kind of plateauing out at 5 out of 5, right? It's a really perfect system for James. Again, if this was long and thin like this, I'm not seeing that impact as clearly. Nothing has changed. It's the same numbers, but when I show it like this, it just jumps out at me much more clearly the direction of our movement. So I think that is another important element to keep in mind. There's all these sort of technical things about how to set it up and what chart widget to add and which metrics to think about. But also, I don't think you should forget that kind of human element. What colors are people going to notice first? What shows the graph doing the things you want it to show the most clearly? And those small little tweaks when you make your dashboards and your reports actually make a really big difference. And keeping it neat and tidy and showing things in the most appealing way will definitely help win people over. One nice example I'll give before we move on from this is an organization that I worked with quite closely who provided mental support to old people. These were people often living alone or in retirement homes, and they were experiencing really chronic loneliness. So they provided this kind of mentoring system and sort of counseling system, and they surveyed people first of all. These Monday forms, by the way, are really user-friendly. You can share this with people in a lot of different ways. As long as they're able to use a phone and put in some basic information, they can fill it out. You don't need to be a tech wizard. You don't need to know how to log into Monday. These forms are all shareable publicly. So even older folks who maybe weren't used to working with technology had no problem with these forms. There's also people there who could help them. And then after they had the session, they sent them the same form again. People didn't see their results. They were answering honestly and openly. And they said, yeah, I'm feeling a 1 out of 5 loneliness before the session. And, the opposite, I hope. Really lonely before the session and less lonely after the session. And they were able to put that out there with these 2 forms, track that it's the same person, and then display it on a graph. And that was really instrumental to them to be able to win bigger grants and recruit more volunteers because they're actually able to show the impact that they were able to have. So there are a couple of examples of ways that we can track our own data against data that we've recorded previously. And using time, we can show the hopefully positive progress that we've made. Excellent. So that leaves us, my friends, with just one element I wanted to show you, which is tracking against the mean. Before we do that, though, there are 4 questions in the chat. So I'm going to jump down here and answer these first, and then we'll move on to that last question. All right. Habiba, great question. Is there an integration to Salesforce that can dynamically update as we get data in Salesforce? That's a tricky one. Technically, the answer is yes. There is an integration with Salesforce. However, it comes with a couple of pretty big caveats. First of all, it's only available on the enterprise plan. So you would need to, upgrade to enterprise or already be at enterprise, I suppose. Second, it's not something which regular users can set up because of the really complex way that Salesforce is built, and it's quite a rigid software. They do need a dedicated developer to help set that up for you, and it's pretty complex, right? It's often pretty expensive, so it is possible. If it's something which you really need, it's definitely not something you should rule out. But yeah, it's a heavy lift. It's something which our big enterprise companies are doing with the help of developers, and not a lot of nonprofits I know have gone through that process. You can also, of course, do things sort of in between. You could also set yourself a time once a week, once a month. I don't know how often you need the data to be downloaded to be accurate, to download a spreadsheet from Salesforce and upload it to Monday. But yeah, as much as possible, we want to try and kind of eliminate that double work and having duplicate information. I understand that's why you want it to be dynamic. So yeah, that's sort of a yes and no answer, I guess, there. But yeah, very, very good question. And Erica, will it give you the actuals at that time in real time? I guess we're talking about the report. Yes, it would. It's going to generate the report in real time and present it as it looked there. By the way, if you feel like your reports are taking too long to load, you can actually turn that off. You have here the option of turning off your live data. So if your data is doesn't need to be updated to the minute, and you've got a really big, heavy dashboard with 30 widgets connecting to really complex boards, you could turn this off. And then it will upload, every time you come in and out of the account, it will upload, but it won't upload live like the other ones are. So by default, it's live, it's completely up to date. Every single change will be reflected there automatically, but that can slow you down if you've got really complex boards, so you can turn it off if you want. Okay, great. So those are all the questions I have so far. So let's now take a look at the last piece, building comparative data against the mean. For this one, I added here a new folder called water quality. And for this one, you need to imagine that what our nonprofit does is we clean up beaches. Okay, we have a beach in our community, which we weren't happy with its pollution levels. And so we took it upon ourselves to start cleaning it up. And I want to show the impact that we've been able to have. Our beach is doing great. It's been much more healthy and safe to swim in, and show against the mean of all the other places where the regional government, in our case, is doing water quality checks to show that we are doing better than the average across the country, let's say. So to do that, I went to some publicly available data. I'm from New Zealand. I went to the New Zealand Water Authority. I think I should have had that tab open. I think it's called NIWA. This is it here in the New Zealand case. And I went to their publications. They produce a report every month or so where they show the quality of the water in all the different places where they're doing tests. It's downloadable for free. And I did a very small amount of kind of cleaning it up to prepare it to upload to Monday. I didn't upload all of it, but I uploaded a big chunk of data into Monday. You can see here I have 1,435 items. Now, of course, you're probably not going to be working with water quality data from the west coast of New Zealand. I get that. Whatever field you are working in, it's pretty likely there's going to be some kind of standard out there publicly available in the web. This is where you will need to do a bit of creative work, and no AI bot will probably be able to give you the perfect answer. You're going to need to think about this, and your field better than anybody, I'm sure. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe AI can help you brainstorm where you can find some interesting data. But tracking the data that you're doing against the mean, I think, will be very helpful if you can find a publicly available source like I've got here. So what do I have here? I've got an item for all the different places where we've been testing the water, whether it's lake, river, or coastal, the latitude and longitude, which, by the way, I've built a very simple Monday formula here to turn into a longitude and latitude digital GPS coordinates, just using concatenate, just adding together these two fields. And then I've moved that information into a location column. And that allows me to see on the map where this data comes from. So if I zoom in here to the west coast of New Zealand, you can see exactly where the water checks have been done. So pretty cool, right? You can get to very detailed because it is, GPS coordinates. You can see exactly which part of the lake each of these readings come from. So there may be a few small tweaks to the data that you want to make so that it is ready for this kind of thing in Monday. I've got the date it was recorded in, and then the value of the sample that they found per 100 mils in the water. Okay. Then I've got the same basic information from our beach. Okay, over the last couple of years, every month we've sent someone down, either myself or my colleague Sarah, to do an FIB check to see the quality of the water. And you can see back in the day when we started testing the water in our local beach, we were, 150, 130. And over time, we slowly saw that things got lower and lower and lower to the point now where in this year we're down to, single figures almost for how much FIB we see per 100 mils in the water. Great. So now the magic happens when I visit the data comparison dashboard. Here, I've built a really nice, clean report. Okay. The first thing I've added is a nice widget that we haven't yet covered, and that is the text widget. It's very simple, but adding a nice clean header like that, where you can fill in whatever you want, you can write it however you like, you can change the color and the font and so on, just gives it a nice, clean, professional look. And then I have, first of all, the total amount by each individual testing site. So this is showing over time, every place that has been tested and the quality of the water. In some cases, we have a lot of testing, so we have more appearing, but you can see what I've done here. I have colored all of the external ones blue, and I've colored my local beach yellow. Why? Obviously, so that what I'm trying to highlight stands out. Okay, I want to see the overall spread, but I also want to see where we sit in the average. So it's pretty clear how we're doing. Okay, we're kind of in the middle here among this little cluster of beaches, and there's obviously a lot with a lot higher quality than us, a lot worse quality. Then we also have the average. Okay, this will eliminate those beaches where we've done a lot of testing versus those that we haven't, but it won't show us the change over time. For that, we have this one. This graph is showing that over time, each of these different beaches have these spikes and troughs. In this one, to really make our beach stand out, I colored us in green and left everyone else in gray. Because again, the story that I'm trying to tell doesn't matter about Buller River or Lake Canary or Karorero Domain. These are just to show the average across all of the different sites. So the fact that they are harder to tell apart is fine for me. What I want to really highlight is what we've done, okay? I can see there was a general trend in the green graph here of reduction down towards this, really nice kind of cliff at the end of 2025. Now, there is actually some perhaps more work I could do here because many of our beaches don't have data for 2025. So it's showing as if it goes down to zero. That's not true. So maybe I'd want to add a filter here to remove any data points which are missing or show just zero. Or maybe I want to add some data points for 2025 for every single location to make sure that we don't see that drop off to zero. These are all the sort of narrative type questions that you need to think about. What am I trying to show here? Again, I'm never suggesting you're going to manipulate your data, change things to be different from how they truly are. I'm just meaning that if your story that you're telling isn't being highlighted clearly in your data, you might need to think of ways to make that more obvious. And yeah, some of those small tweaks can really help in that sense. So I think you will all agree, I hope, that this isn't that difficult to come up with. As long as you can think of the story you want to tell, and you've got the availability of some, really nice, solid, big data, the number of kids in your neighborhood who are suffering from a certain condition, or the education average across your entire country, or the quality of the water and the beaches, whatever it may be, if you've got access to it, download it, upload it into Monday. Not hard. And then building these charts and widgets can really do a compelling job of showing the amazing work that you're doing versus, the national average, where despite having all this, government funding, they weren't able to get the beach cleaned up anywhere near as well as we were. So my friends, we have officially reached the 1 hour mark of our session today. And that is where we're going to have to wrap things up. There are a couple of questions I'm going to take a very quick look at to see if we can answer those in the next 30 seconds. Okay, cool. Great question. How did you move lat and longitude from formula to location column? A couple of people have asked that. Okay, so I'll confess, I have a dirty secret to admit to here. I did a little bit of manual work in this case. I built the formula to combine latitude and longitude, but as a couple of people in the chat pointed out, to pull it into a map, it needs to be in a location column. Okay, this cannot be displayed on a map, even though the data is the same. Now, it might sound crazy to imagine copying and pasting 1,435 items from one to another, but I didn't copy and paste 1,435 items. I ordered the column like this so that I could see how many I have from the same location. I then batch select all of the entries from the same location. You could also, by the way, use filters for this. And then we broke it down to 65. And then I copied and pasted this from the formula column into the location column. And I think I did that maybe a dozen times, something like that. And it took me probably 1.5 seconds per time. So I know that it sounds horrible to suggest that you're going to do manual work after building this amazing automated system, but sometimes it is honestly just the easiest way of doing things. And you've always got to compare what you're doing compared to how it would have been in the old days, right? Is it an improvement on that? And I think in this case, yeah, it's got a lot of value. It's definitely an improvement of the manual, just typing everything in one by one. And sometimes it is just worthwhile to do a bit of manual work, and the location column is just a tricky one. It's difficult to pass information into that because it has the geodata baked in. But if you've got sort of some kind of standardization in your board where you've got, one list of countries or one list of places, it's honestly not too bad just to copy and paste it over. So yeah, that is my secret there. Nothing more than a bit of manual work. And I think that is the last question we have. Will the slides be available? Yes, I'll be sending a recording of all of this. That is not a problem. You will get all of this in the follow-up email. Fabulous. All right, my friends. So once again, thank you all very much for joining. I really hope this has been a valuable session. This is just the second time we've ever done this session. So if anyone has any feedback, questions, moving forward, please let me know. I'll also send links to all the other resources that we have and the future sessions that are coming up, so you're able to join me again if you want to learn more about managing donors or volunteers or whatever else it may be. So maybe I'll see you again in future sessions. Keep an eye out for what we're doing around the corner. For now, though, have a wonderful rest of your day, and good luck using Monday to show the amazing impact that you're having. I hope that it'll help you win bigger grants, gain more donors, achieve more things with your staff and volunteers, and enable you to have even more impact in your communities. So thanks again very much, and see you all again perhaps in the future. Bye-bye.